Hi, and welcome to Your Prosperity, a podcast series on financial topics including tax, wealth creation, superannuation, lending, audit, and many other things that we deal with here on a regular basis at Prosperity Advisors. As with all financial podcasts, any advice you hear in this is general in nature and not to be relied upon. Please contact us for any specific advice. Hi, and welcome to the podcast. It's the 19th of January, 2023. To continue with my theme, we've got a bit of a medical slant on this one as well. So probably more so GPs, but others in the medical industry as well. I've got with me special guest, Marcus Wilson from Surgical Partners, CEO, founder, everything else. Marcus, welcome.
Thanks, Brendan. Great to be on the show.
Yeah, great to have you. So we're doing a little run of a few different, guests who are talking in the medical industry, which obviously I'm do a fair bit of accounting with. I've seen you at enough events, conferences, whatnot, webinars, things around the place, and seen your products. So I thought it'd be good just to chat a bit about some of the, tech focus is a little bit of where I am in the medical industry at the moment and looking at. Mm-hmm. But you've sort of got a bit of a system that works quite well with some integrations, and probably talking a bit more generally about integration in the tech space in the medical industry as well. So, there's probably in the past, we've had a lot of barriers to having your sort of tech involved because we didn't have computer software that can handle it. And the important part is having computer software that can make tech talk together with, Xero and those sort of things coming out. It makes it a lot easier. Talk us through a bit about that space for you and how you find that tech is improving automation in the industry.
Yeah, well, I guess when I first dived into it, I really thought that, like most of the business technology world was moving quickly. And I thought, well, geez, if we're going to bring a solution to market, we're going to have to really get our skates on to stay in front of this opportunity. But, as I've come to learn, and those who've been in the industry for some time have come to learn, is healthcare is quite unique. There's a lot of barriers to adoption. There's a lot of reticence to adopt technology. There's a lot of conservatism, and rightly so when it comes to handling patients and respecting patient outcomes. It's not an area which is ripe for risk taking, and so there is quite a lot of lag in adoption, and also the core technologies that have historically been used by like GPs or other sort of medical practices. They've been desktop systems which have been limited in their ability to connect with other systems and integrate and automate, and so it's had a few sort of natural limitations to it. And the other thing it's worth mentioning too is you've seen one medical practice, they're all different. There's a lot of variability in structures and contractual arrangements, so being able to deliver a one-size-fits-all software solution to the industry is, it's never really going to fly. So, it takes some time to kind of build up, the range of features and settings and variability to be able to, make a substantial mark and penetrate what still is kind of a niche cottage industry.
Yeah, and you're right. It's an interesting comment you make. You've seen one. Like every practice should be the same and should be pretty similar, but there's different service fees. There's different arrangements of different doctors depending on the billings. There's different arrangements of nurses. Yeah. There's different arrangements of rooms. They all seem to be a little bit different. And then my area structures, obviously, those all change as well into different things as well. So there is a lot of. I agree. They're not all the same. It's a bit hard to say. Well, this is the standard way it works. It doesn't work like that. It'd be good if we could have, here's the standard way of doing it, and it'd be nice and smooth, and then it'd all work well, but it never happens like that. So I was going to say that how once we've moved away from those desktop systems, because you're all about integrating cloud-based technology to work well together, if I could oversimplify what you do. When did the shift come to that, and how has technology changed to allow you to do that? I get a desktop used to be just export to Excel and start filtering it, but now we can do more. Talk us through that technology and why that's achievable.
Yeah, well, I guess the core of every medical practice is a practice management system, and there's been a lot of talk about practice management systems moving to cloud, and by cloud I mean true, in a browser, web-based technology, much like we've seen in accounting systems with the likes of Xero over the last decade or 15 years. I guess the issue with core practice management systems moving to cloud is, it's going to take some time for the functionality of cloud-based system to catch up with the functionality required to run a medical practice. If you think about, e-prescribing, you think about, Medicare claiming, you think about radiology, pathology results, my health record integration, all the different subspecialties that need to be served. It just takes time for, cloud systems to catch up with the desktop functionality. And also, if you think about it, arguably accounting, like in the Xero example, doesn't require, quickly moving through screens. But if you're a GP, for example, and you're sitting with a patient, you don't want to be spending too much time in front of the screen. You want to be talking to the patient. But when you're in front of the screen and you got to move through screens, you got to click really fast, right? And often, unless you have just, the best internet connection available, it's just a reality that web-based systems just don't move as quickly. So there has been this kind of delay in cloud-based technology coming into healthcare practices in terms of core systems. Now, that doesn't mean you can't integrate and automate. It doesn't mean just because you're not in the cloud, you can't have good APIs and good integration and good connectivity. So what we've seen is various systems over time work around those kind of desktop limitations. You've seen Tyro integrate payments over the last 10 or 15 years. More and more payment systems are coming into that space, trying to integrate. The practice management systems have come up with partnership arrangements. They've started to build connection pathways. So even though there still is that limitation of desktop prevalent in the sector, there's been sort of workarounds which has enabled more and more data interaction between systems. And so we've kind of been at the forefront of driving that data extraction in terms of billing information and extracting that information in a standardized way. Of course, all of the different practice management systems do things differently, just like the practices do things differently. So coming to a bit of a standard as to what's an invoice, what's a payment, what's a refund, and all of that, and being able to then apply contractual rules, business rules to that data that we extract, i.e., what's a service fee for a practitioner under what contractual condition. It might be a percentage for day of the week, or a certain item gets a certain percentage, or one doctor versus another. Once we get that data out in a standardized way through those integrations that we've developed with these various desktop systems, we can then start applying more and more contractual flexibility, business rules to that data, and then integrate that into more standard downstream integrations. And by that, I mean things like Xero. Like Xero has an API that our cloud technology can really easily talk to once we've got that data out, and once we're starting to apply those various, contractual rules that the practices have in place.
And that's the important part of that, I think. I mean, you obviously deal in the tech world enough, and throwing out API and integration. It sounds easy, but at the end of the day, the important part, I feel, is you're not paying somebody a wage to do this. It's an automated process once it's set up, and happens like that, and it just flows through. You don't need someone going, okay, now do that. Now I'll push that there. Then I'll work out how much we're going to pay that. We're going to transfer to that doctor for their billings. Let's not even get into payroll tax right now. That's a hot topic, that one, but let's avoid that right now. But assuming you're paying money to the doctor and then paying money to the practice, however you're splitting that up, that's an automated process is the key. And obviously that's your business and how it works. And you've made that automation between the practice management software and the Xero, say, for example, where it just happens smoothly, works out who gets what, how much is each person's money, a nice smooth flow. And then also the bit that I like as an accountant is you push the transaction into Xero, and it actually prepares the transaction for you in Xero. So it kind of does the work for you, which is really good. So it just saves a bit of that back end time, or a lot of time. What sort of time is it saving, as an example of? We'll get onto some other tech in a sec, but just on your product, what does it say?
Well, I think if you think about that standard workflow, there's extraction of reports. Those reports are then, imported into some kind of Excel format. The percentages are applied. That what is output from that spreadsheet might be entered in Xero, and then an invoice might be generated. So there's a number of steps there. There's extraction, there's calculation, there's data entry, which is really double entry at the end of the day. So depending on the size of the practice, how many doctors they have, how often they do it, this could range from an hour a fortnight to 3 or 4 hours a fortnight. If you're doing it weekly, it could add up to 10 or 15 hours a month. So
a fair bit of time, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And besides, we want to get that down, or we have got that down to a couple of clicks. So it's a matter of going in once a fortnight, all the numbers are there, push a button, goes into Xero. You can download an ABA file from Xero, upload it into your online banking and pay. And besides the speed of that couple of clicks versus those hours, what we're talking about there is data integrity as well. There's no re-entry into systems where mistakes can be made. It's the same data that's going into that banking payment instruction that has gone out on invoices and statements automatically from the system to the doctors. So there's that integrity sort of side of it as well. And then besides that data going into the Xero file for the practice, we can also integrate that data in terms of what each individual practitioner receives into their individual Xero file as well. So if you think about it, a financial management solution for the practice, it's also a financial management solution for the practices. And in a tight recruitment market, which we know, particularly in the GP space, a lot of practices are suffering from, differentiators like that can be really important.
Yeah, that's right. And apart from obviously your surgical partners, sort of your stack that you've got, or your tech that you've got, what stacks are you finding in the industry is good at the moment? Like, so what's working well? Because there's no point having a few bits of tech and then you have one system that's an old desktop that doesn't integrate with everything and makes it all fall apart. What sort of tech stacks are out there that are working well in the medical space at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like a lot of other industries, duopolies form, and the larger systems get the most partnerships, they get the most integrations and automations. They just flock to the popular systems. That's just an unfortunate reality of the world we live in. And everyone's got their own view on practice management systems, for example, but in terms of the ability to integrate and automate, we've seen the most popular system in GPs, for example, being Best Practice, have probably the most extensive range of financial management integrations. And so a common one that we see that works really well is Best Practice, and probably the most pervasive small business, or certainly the most pervasive small business accounting system at the moment is Xero. So Best Practice and Xero would be a very rock solid combination for financial management in GPs. On the front end, in terms of payments, historically Tyro has been a really prolific, well-integrated solution into Best Practice. We're starting to see more and more. If you're thinking about online appointments, or telehealth, or taking payments virtually as opposed to like a Tyro machine over the counter, worth looking at solutions like AutoMed. AutoMed's a really great solution for taking payment online, chasing debt collections, for example. And once AutoMed takes that payment on behalf of the practice, it writes it into Best Practice or Medical Director. So having that payment not have to go through a human hand to get into the PMS, and then us taking it out of the PMS and putting it into accounting, you've got, again, that integrity benefit, because there's no one who's actually manually entering that anywhere. So it's really about integration and automation from the time it leaves the patient's wallet all the way through to the ledger at tax time, really.
Yeah, and that's a payment system that puts it into Best Practice. Then
that's right.
Your system automatically pulls it out of Best Practice.
That's right.
Puts it up, works out where it needs to be paid through the Xero file, preps it all.
Yep.
You upload the ABA file and away you go. What about at the other end? Are there other good techs? And I'm putting you on the spot here, but you're around enough industry people like me. What other tech sort of stuff are you seeing out there that's having good integration?
I mean, one of the real superstars of recent years has been Cubico. So Cubico is a sort of operational financial insights platform, increasingly getting almost into clinical insights. And
conveniently, we're on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. That's handy.
Oh, there you go. There you go. And these, operators, Chris Mead, who founded Cubico, worked as a practice manager and came out of that practice management environment, really understood the problems at a practice level, and built a solution to solve those. And, there's a lot of practice managers who are involved in the Cubico team now who have been there, done that, and really have fantastic experience in understanding what are the insights that practices need to know, how to actually act on those insights. And they're a commercial partner of ours. We integrate our data into Cubico because part of the things that we calculate is what belongs to the practice and what belongs to the doctor. So effectively the contractual split between the two. So if you're using Cubico, you would see at the aggregate level, well, what's my billings per hour or billings per appointment, or but that doesn't show the practitioner and the practice, well, what's my share of that gross billing per appointment? So by supplementing our data into Cubico, you can see that next layer down of relevance to the practice owner and to the practitioner. So I think what we're going to see there in terms of tech stack, I mentioned Tyro at the front end in terms of payments. What we're going to see, I think, we're already seeing is new entrants into the market. Like CBA has a fantastic solution called CBA Smart Health, and they've partnered with Cubico, they've partnered with us. And the reason I mention that is because what I think you're going to see is more sort of single sign-on solutions. So there's a bit of we're talking about tech stack, but when you think about stack, you also think about app fatigue. Like there's so many different solutions that you need to consider, and that's another thing to log into. So I think what we're going to see over time is not only single sign-on, you sign in once and then you get access to other technologies from that single sign-on, but also single provisioning across systems. So if a new doctor starts, how can that one provision in one system then populate doctors in other systems? Now, this is, not available today, but it's not that far off. So I think
like automated onboarding doctor stuff, sort of.
Absolutely. And there's a whole drive from the government, the Australian Digital Health Agency, around this single provisioning concept. And that all started from secure messaging, because doctors would be moving around and they'd be receiving patient results, pathology results, or whatever. But all of a sudden they weren't at that practice anymore. So the message would never get to the right doctor at the right place. So there was an incentive on the government to develop infrastructure that would enable directories where doctors are, and making sure that once they move to somewhere else, that they provision across more and more systems. So leveraging that kind of industry infrastructure, we really see like systems like ours, for example, because the very first thing that a doctor does when they join a practice, the first thing they should do is sign a contract. That's
Absolutely,
the first
thing. They should. I think these days that's becoming a lot more prevalent, but definitely 5 years ago, you'd walk around going, "Where's the contracts? The what now?"
Yeah. So once they've signed a contract, then we store the details of that contract and we operate that contract through our system. But because we're the first point of call, it's logical, and we know who they are, because if they're signing a contract, you need to know, who's on the other end of that contract. So we're in a privileged position to not only provision them in some of those other technologies that I mentioned, be it payments or Cubico or whatever, but also to provision them, and even in things like medical director or best practice or whatever. So I think you're going to start to see a lot of coalescence, I guess, amongst these various technologies to make it easier to provision doctors, which is a real pain point for practice. I mean, you hear about locums, for example, like when you apply for a locum job, you have to send through this sort of Dropbox worth of information. All these forms to fill in. It's a real pain point. So I think in the next couple of years, you're going to see a bit of a step change in some technologies around those, and greater standardization. I talked before around part of the problem with adopting technology in healthcare is the lack of standardization. I think we're just going to see more and more standardization creep in the industry, aided of course by things like consolidation. There's more and more consolidated operators, larger operators, and the larger you are, obviously the more standard you're going to be.
And I guess at the end of the day, for a tech to make sense, there's got to be the need, which is really going to be driven by more accurate data, faster information to access you need to make good decisions for your business.
Yep.
And probably the tech stack also helping you if you're at that precipice of, do I need to put on another admin staff, or maybe delaying that because you can save some time for people. So you're saving time, improving a process and making it quicker. It makes sense as long as the dollars stack up. So I guess that's the impetus for all tech, and it's just a matter of time. In this world we're in now, tech is dominating everything. So yeah, I guess it's more and more integration of tech and more of those things. So look, appreciate you coming on, Marcus. Really enjoyed that. Obviously, you've got your product. I'll put some links in the notes for people, but just in generally, a few other products you mentioned there as well. But just the tech in general, it's being aware of what tech's out there, what will work for you, and what's going to benefit your practice in an ever-changing world. Which one of the other things you pointed out is sometimes that's a case of having a more presentable practice that's more appealing to a doctor to come and be a contractor at your practice. So that can be a huge benefit as well. So yeah, appreciate it. Marcus Wilson, Surgical Partners. Thanks for joining us. I really hope everyone enjoyed the podcast. If you want to jump on, follow it, share it with your friends, follow the series. All we do here at Prosperity, lots of different topics. Have a listen. And Marcus, thanks very much.
Cheers. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks for joining us for today's podcast. Hopefully you liked it. And if so, please give us a few stars, like and share. And if you'd like to follow the series, please subscribe and pass any information on to your friends as well if you think they might like it. For more information about who we are, head to prosperity.com.au and follow the links.